He lay there motionless on the hospital bed, tubes in his veins, bruises on his skin, a quiet man who had just signed a $50 million deal that could have changed their lives forever. But his wife never waited long enough to know. She walked out that night, perfume heavy in the air, wedding ring left on the tray beside his untouched water, straight into the arms of his best friend, the man who toasted their anniversaries and called Noah brother. To her, Noah was finished, broken, done. To him, she was everything, until that moment. But what kind of woman leaves her husband in a hospital bed for his best friend, unaware he's the one holding a fortune in his name? And what kind of man, abandoned and bleeding, rises to destroy everything she built on his ashes? The rain in Dallas that night wasn't supposed to fall. It was the kind of storm that turns headlights into ghosts and streets into mirrors. Noah Wilder's Tesla skidded on the wet asphalt just as his phone vibrated with the message that was supposed to change everything. Deal closed. $50 million wired. Congratulations, partner. He never saw the truck coming. When he woke up, the world smelled like antiseptic and fear. A heart monitor beeped beside him, slow, stubborn, and alive. His right leg was bandaged. His lips were dry. But when he turned his head and saw Savannah, his wife of 8 years, sitting at the edge of the bed scrolling through her phone, relief poured into him. She didn't look up. Her tone was flat. "You're lucky they got you out." He smiled weakly. "Sav, I did it. The merger went through. 50 million, babe. It's done." For a moment she froze. Then, like a glitch, her face rearranged itself into polite disbelief. 50 million? He nodded, his hand trembling as he reached for hers. "We can finally pay off the mortgage. You can quit the firm. We can..." Her hand pulled away before he could finish. "Noah, I can't do this anymore." He blinked. "Do what?" "This," she said, her voice tightening. "Hospitals. Pity. This life. I'm 32. I can't spend my best years watching you recover." He stared at her. This woman he once thought was his miracle, as she gathered her purse, her phone, and a small rolling suitcase. The sound of the zipper echoed like a blade. "You're leaving," he whispered. "I'm moving on." Her eyes flickered, not guilt, not pain, just impatience. "You'll be fine. Liam's been there for me through this whole mess." "Liam?" His best friend's name hit him harder than the crash. She looked at the floor. "He understands me. He makes me feel alive." For a long second, Noah said nothing. The machines beeped, counting his silence like seconds before death. He exhaled, slow. "You're leaving your husband at a hospital bed for my best friend?" Her voice was colder now. "Don't make this dramatic. You've always been too nice, Noah, and nice doesn't survive." She turned, heels clicking against the sterile floor. He reached out weakly, but his voice broke instead of his body. "Savannah." The door shut behind her before he could finish her name. Outside, thunder cracked, a raw electric sound that swallowed the corridor. Dr. Clara Evans, who had been adjusting his IV, paused. Her eyes softened. "She's not coming back, is she?" Noah asked. The doctor said nothing, only adjusted his oxygen, but the silence told him everything. Through the window, the rain eased. The city lights glimmered in the puddles, and Noah lay there staring into the ceiling, realizing that his kindness had just cost him everything he ever loved. The next morning, sunlight leaked through the hospital blinds like it didn't know what happened the night before. Nurses moved quietly, changing sheets, checking vitals, pretending not to notice the empty chair beside Noah's bed. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the fabric, sweet, expensive, unearned. He stared at the ring on the tray. It caught the light like a joke, a symbol of vows that died in a thunderstorm. Dr. Clara Evans brought his discharge papers, but what she really handed him was a mirror, one that showed a man who'd loved too gently. "Your vitals are strong," she said softly. "You'll walk again?" "I'm not sure I want to," he murmured. She hesitated, then squeezed his shoulder. "Sometimes people come back to apologize." He smiled without humor. Not her. Outside the hospital, Dallas was bright, loud, ordinary. Life had moved on without him, and somewhere in the city, Savannah already had. At the Lakeside Chapel, 2 weeks later, Cameras flashed as Savannah Moore Wilder became Savannah Hart. The groom's tuxedo gleamed. The guest whispered. Liam held her waist like a prize he'd stolen fair and square. Their laughter floated through stained glass light, and for a moment Savannah believed she had won. Her mother, Evelyn Moore, watched proudly from the front row. She had raised her daughter to survive through charm and calculation. Never marry love, she once said. Marry stability. She didn't know that the man her daughter chose carried envy like a sickness. Across town, Noah sat in a dim apartment he'd rented under his brother Caleb's name. The walls were bare except for a single frame photo, him, Savannah, and the 3 children he thought were his. He replayed her last words on a loop. Nice doesn't survive. Caleb entered quietly, carrying a bag of takeout. You need to eat, bro. Noah didn't answer. He was scrolling through news updates, watching the wedding hashtags rise. Trader Savannah, Hart trending #2 in Texas. He stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Caleb sighed. You can still fight her. No, Noah said, his tone flat. I'm not fighting her. Not yet. He looked out the window at the skyline, the city that once celebrated him as the next big tech visionary. Somewhere beneath that skyline sat the $50 million deal, sealed and signed before the crash, still hidden in a shell company Liam thought was gone. Savannah was dancing in a white dress, and Noah was learning how silence can sharpen into strategy. That night, rain returned, gentle this time. He took the ring from the tray and dropped it into his glass of water, watching it sink. It hit the bottom with a dull clink, a funeral bell for something once beautiful. But grief has stages, and his was about to evolve. Because when kindness dies, something colder's born, and Noah Wilder was starting to feel alive again. Savannah Hart stood in front of the mirror of her new penthouse, adjusting her diamond earring while Liam fastened his cufflinks. The suite overlooked the Dallas skyline, all glass, gold, and arrogance. Yet behind the shimmer, something restless moved in her reflection. Liam kissed her shoulder. You're glowing. She smiled faintly. You ever wonder if we went too far? He laughed. You don't look like regret to me. But when he left for a meeting, she lingered by the mirror, staring at herself like a stranger. That face, polished, perfect, wasn't hers. It was her mother's, reborn in younger skin. Her mother, Evelyn Moore, used to say, if you ever feel guilty, it means you're doing it right. Guilt is for poor people. Savannah was 15 when she learned what that meant. She remembered the night her father came home drunk, smelling of perfume that wasn't her mother's. Evelyn had waited with quiet rage, then sold his secrets to his business rival for half the company's shares. The next morning, she told Savannah, love is a transaction, learn to negotiate. That became Rule 1. Rule 2 came in college. She had fallen for a kind, broke architecture student who built her a jewelry box from scrap wood. When he couldn't afford dinner one night, she felt something break inside her, a voice whispering her mother's words, never marry, struggle. 2 weeks later, she left him for an older professor who drove a Jaguar. Rule 3 was survival. Don't let a man leave you first. Her first husband, an oil executive, left her anyway, after discovering she was pregnant by another man. She cried in court, told the judge she'd been emotionally neglected, and walked away with 3 houses and alimony. Her second lover funded her boutique. Her third got her a seat at charity galas. Her fourth, Liam, gave her access to Noah's world. And Noah, he was the perfect mask. He made her believe she could pretend to love. He bought her silence with patience, forgiveness, and kindness, until kindness started to bore her. When she saw him limp across the living room after work, she felt disgust, not pity. Weakness isn't attractive, Evelyn used to whisper, applying lipstick before every argument. Savannah's entire life was a relay of betrayals, passed from mother to daughter, lover to lover, each one sharpening her smile. But that night, as she stared at her reflection, she caught a flicker of something behind her eyes. Fear, because deep down, she knew the pattern never ends. It only shifts its target. And if she could betray Noah that easily, what stopped Liam from doing the same to her? The knock on the door startled her. Liam leaned in, grinning. Dinner's ready, Mrs. Hart. She smiled, but her stomach twisted. Somewhere inside, a small buried voice whispered, You've married your own mirror, and mirrors always crack. 2 months after Savannah's wedding, Noah Wilder sat in his new office, smaller than his old one, but quieter, emptier, safer. The blinds were half drawn, dust floating in the light. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days except the cleaning staff who pretended not to recognize him. The $50 million deal sat in a file on his desk, still untouched, sealed, waiting. He couldn't bring himself to spend a cent of it. Every dollar felt like blood. A soft knock came at the door. Grace Taylor stepped in. A woman in her late 30s, composed, sharp-eyed, the kind of calm that unnerves liars. She placed a brown envelope on the table between them. I found what you asked for, she said. Noah's voice was low. You're sure? She didn't answer. She just pushed the envelope forward. Inside were 3 DNA test results, each stamped with a different name. 3 children he had loved like his own. He scanned the pages slowly. His fingers trembled once, then steadied. Child 1, no biological match. Child 2, no biological match. Child 3, no biological match. He closed the file. All of them? Grace nodded once. The oldest belongs to Liam Hart. The second, a man named Charles Denton, Savannah's ex-employer. The youngest, unknown, possibly a donor or affair outside Dallas. The words landed softly, but the silence afterward was violent. Noah leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She told me I was their hero, he whispered. I stayed up nights fixing her presentation decks. I taught our boy to ride a bike. Grace interrupted gently. She used you for stability, Noah. That's what people like her do. He turned to the window. The skyline glowed gold in the evening sun. The same city where Savannah's laughter probably echoed over dinner with Liam. Thank you, Grace, he said quietly. She hesitated. There's more. She slid another file forward. Photos, time-stamped transactions, a hidden bank transfer to Liam made 2 weeks before the accident. They were planning to leave even before your crash. For the first time in weeks, Noah smiled. Small, bitter, controlled. Of course they were. Grace studied him. You're not angry? He exhaled. Anger's temporary. I need something permanent. Grace nodded slowly, realizing what was forming behind his calm tone. You're planning something. He didn't deny it. Not revenge, he said softly. Correction? She almost smiled. You sound like my father. He used to say justice isn't loud. It's methodical. Noah stood, reaching for his jacket. Then let's be methodical. That night, he sat alone in the apartment. The envelope open on his desk. The city lights flickered across his face. Behind him, the photo of his children lay torn in half. Not in rage, but in ritual. He whispered to the empty room, almost tenderly, You wanted a man who wasn't nice, Savannah. You're about to meet him. Outside, thunder rolled again. Not a storm this time, but an omen. They met in Jordan Banks' office, a room that smelled faintly of old books and black coffee, where every leather chair had seen a dozen ruined reputations and a few carefully won ones. Jordan sat behind a desk that could pass for a judge's bench. His suit was a shade too dark, his eyes practiced at reading silence. Noah folded his hands on the table, the envelope of DNA reports heavy in his pocket like a landmine. Jordan opened a legal pad and without looking up said, Tell me what you want to accomplish. Noah didn't say revenge. He said, I want the truth to be louder than their lies. I want her life to be the mirror of what she did to me. Legally, permanently. Jordan's lips tightened the way they did when he thought a client underestimated a game. We don't do theatrical, we do surgical. He tapped a pen. We'll build a plan that collapses them piece by piece. Finances, reputation, custody, corporate control. Each move must be defensible, provable, and devastating. Noah felt an unexpected calm. The rage inside him settled into focus, like a lens finding an image. No theatrics, he repeated, methodical. Jordan leaned back and almost conversationally laid out a scaffolding, a legal architecture with 15 pillars of correction. He named the categories: forensic accounting to follow money trails, custody and paternity claims to expose fraud, corporate audits to reveal conflicts of interest, SEC and contract reviews to unearth breaches, strategic leaks to ethical journalists, and a crushing courtroom strategy to tie every lie into an undeniable narrative. As Jordan spoke, Noah pictured each pillar like a chess piece. He remembered Jordan's own history, the boy who grew up watching his father lose everything in a public divorce, a memory Jordan had refined into a career. Control truth, control the outcome. It gave Jordan a chill clarity that matched Noah's new coldness. They agreed on the first moves that night. Grace Taylor would expand the DNA and financial proof into a mosaic of documents and witness statements. Jordan would file discreet motions to freeze suspect accounts and place third-party firms under legal scrutiny. Caleb Wilder would quietly infiltrate Liam's social circle, listening, recording, and buying time until the formal legal strikes could land. Noah's brother Caleb arrived at the end of the meeting, sleeves rolled, eyes burning with the kind of hurt that wants to act. "I'm in," he said simply. He remembered watching Noah shoulder pain for years. Loyalty had hardened into a promise. Never again. Jordan warned them of risks, countersuits, smear campaigns, loyal allies turning on a dime. "They'll try to paint you as vengeful," he said. "We must look measured. We must look, publicly, like a man seeking justice, not blood." Noah nodded. "We'll let the facts do the rage." They broke the plan into phases: quiet containment while evidence compiled, targeted legal strikes that would unravel Liam's standing as a businessman, a public exposure timed to the court filing so the media could not spin their narrative first, and a final courtroom crescendo where Jordan would tie every lie, every bank transfer, every falsified paternity claim into a single, undeniable story. Before they left, Jordan looked at Noah, not pitying him, not admiring him, assessing him. "You understand this will change you," he said. Noah breathed out, the sound steady. "It already has." Outside, the city moved, unaware, loud, indifferent. Inside the room, a plan had been born. Cold, legal, immovable. It would not undo what Savannah had done, but it would make certain she could never do it again. Liam Hart didn't notice the first fracture. He was too busy posing for a magazine shoot in his downtown office, smiling into the camera beside Savannah. The headline calling them Dallas's new power couple. The photographer asked for one more shot, and Savannah leaned against his shoulder, pretending her pulse wasn't racing from the champagne. But that afternoon, a message slid across Liam's desk. An internal audit request from the Department of Financial Compliance. A minor issue, the email said. Routine. He shrugged it off, passed it to his assistant. The next day, his assistant quit. By the end of the week, 2 of his investors pulled out of a joint venture, citing concerns about partnership integrity. His company accountant, normally calm, called in panic. "Liam, they're freezing our secondary accounts. Something's wrong with the filings. There's an offshore transaction in your name." Liam interrupted, annoyed. "Fix it. That's why I pay you." Across town in a quiet office filled with the hum of servers, Noah sat with Jordan and Grace watching it unfold. They didn't smile. They simply observed. Every digital move was tracked, every transaction legally mirrored, every discrepancy forwarded to the agencies Noah's legal team had quietly looped in. Grace pointed at the screen. "The Cayman accounts are next. You'll have him cornered by next quarter." Noah's eyes stayed on the data. "Not yet. Let him think it's coincidence. People like Liam don't panic over loss. They panic over exposure." Meanwhile, Savannah felt the tension before she understood it. She returned from a spa appointment to find Liam pacing the living room, phone in hand, face pale. "They're reviewing my contracts with Meridian. Somebody tipped them off." She tried to soothe him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "It's a misunderstanding. You'll clear it up." But he shook her off. "You don't get it. My company runs on investor confidence. They pull out, we sink." She froze, an echo of fear flickering through her. The same feeling she had when her father's company collapsed years ago. Back then, she watched Evelyn Moore pack their jewelry into boxes before dawn, whispering, "Always have an exit plan." Later that night, she sat alone in their marble bathroom, scrolling her phone. Noah's profile appeared on her feed, a single photo he'd just posted. It wasn't a quote or a message, just a quiet shot of his office window overlooking the city lights. The caption read, "Correction begins in silence." Her throat tightened. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not sadness, but dread. Liam entered behind her, voice sharp. "Did you tell him anything? About our accounts?" She turned. "Why would I? You think I'd—" He stared hard. "Maybe you should start worrying about what he knows." Across the city, Noah closed his laptop and turned off the light. His reflection lingered on the glass. Steady, calm, colder than before. Caleb poured him a drink and asked, "Phase 1? Noah nodded once. "Complete. Tomorrow we start taking their faces off their fortune." The city outside pulsed with neon and rain, unaware that every light in their skyline now belonged to him. They woke to the world turning against them. By dawn the next morning, a local investigative reporter had a sealed court filing in one hand and a video clip of Liam and Savannah laughing at a charity gala in the other. The headline was blunt: "Power Couples' Private Affairs, Paternity Claims and Financial Red Flags." The article didn't accuse, it only showed proof. Bank transfers, time-stamped photos, and a single line from an anonymous source that read like a detonator. "Not everything is what it seems." Savannah watched the story unfold from behind floor-to-ceiling glass, the city below a blur. Her phone pinged with messages, friends asking if she was okay, sponsors pulling back, a boutique owner texting, "Are you sure you want our label involved right now?" Liam stared at his screen as if the pixels had betrayed him. He tried to laugh it off. "Controversy sells," he muttered, but his hands shook. Grace stepped into the newsroom like she owned the silence. She had handed the reporter a packet, certified DNA results, forged paternity affidavits, bank records showing transfers into Liam's shell accounts. Each sheet was a carefully placed stone in a path back to the truth. The reporter's producer called it the kind of packet that makes lawyers nervous. It was meant to. Noah watched the clip at home with Caleb and Jordan. He didn't cheer. He folded his hands and let the hum of the laptop fill the room. Jordan leaned forward. "Timing," he said. "We leak now, before they organize a defense narrative. The public will decide before their lawyers can spin doubt." They released a second file that afternoon, a lab certification for the DNA tests, complete with chain of custody timestamps. Social feeds ignited. People who had admired the couple for glossy photos and gala lights now debated betrayal in comments that read like small verdicts. Charity boards quietly rescinded invitations. The couple's PR firm released a statement promising full cooperation, while their private inbox filled with nasty, precise messages. At the country club, where they'd once hosted summer barbecues, a woman who'd once smiled at Savannah now crossed the street to avoid them. At Liam's company, board members scheduled an emergency call. Investors demanded audits. One sponsor texted, "We can't be associated while this is unresolved." That single sentence began the unraveling. The most brutal blow came when the children's paternity story splashed across national outlets. The eldest, portrayed in Nathaniel's receding cheekbones, was suddenly not a Wilder. The revelations weren't just financial, they were intimate betrayals made public. Savannah's image, trained, polished, untouchable, shattered in small everyday ways. An unreturned message from her mother, Evelyn's silence on a televised panel, a neighbor glaring when she picked up her dry cleaning. In the evenings, callers left voicemails, old lovers, former employers, saying things people only say when they want to disappear. "Call me when it's over." Liam's friends started to move carefully around him, like men stepping around a sleeping dog. But the pressure wasn't only public, it turned private and precise. Grace had arranged a quiet deposition with Dr. Clara Evans, who testified to Savannah's leaving Noah while he lay in a hospital bed. The deposition didn't need melodrama. It needed the kind of immutable witness that looks small on paper but huge in perception. When Dr. Evans described the poured-out wedding ring and the patients whispered, "She's not coming back, is she?" The words traveled like frost. Noah read every headline without flinching. He felt the slow, clean satisfaction of a plan working. Yet inside him a narrower question gnawed. Humiliation could ruin them in public, but would it be enough to undo the foundation beneath their money and alliances? Or did he need the courtroom's final edge to make their lives truly unfixable? The courtroom smelled of old paper and polished wood, the kind of place where reputations arrived wearing suit jackets and left lighter. Journalists packed the gallery, cameras blinked like patient insects. Jordan Banks walked in with a leather folder and the sort of quiet confidence forged by decades of watching truth be weaponized. Noah sat beside him, calm, his hands folded. He looked less like a man hungry for revenge and more like one who'd rehearsed grief until it turned into steel. The judge called the case. Savannah Hart looked composed on the stand, a practiced mask that had survived glossy magazine covers and gala lights. Liam sat behind her, jaw clenched, eyes darting like a man trying to map his way out of a maze he'd helped build. Their lawyers opened with predictable fury, but Jordan's opening was surgical. He framed the trial as a search for truth, paternity, fraud, and the deliberate dismantling of a marriage for personal gain. Jordan began with Dr. Clara Evans. Her testimony was simple and anchored to a moment. The wedding ring left on a tray beside a hospital bed, the patient's whisper, the absence of remorse. Jordan asked precise, short questions that let the doctor paint the scene without hyperbole. Did you witness Savannah leave the patient? Yes. Was she alone? No, she was accompanied in the corridor by Mr. Hart in a tuxedo. The gallery inhaled. The image of the bride leaving a bleeding husband for a groom in a tuxedo hung in the air like a verdict. Next came Grace Taylor. She moved through the evidence with the weary efficiency of someone who'd spent nights untangling lies. Jordan guided her through the chain of custody for the DNA tests, the timestamps on the bank transfers, the offshore shell companies tied to Liam. Each exhibit he introduced, marked, admitted, was a small, undeniable strike. The defense objected, tried to smear sources, but Jordan anticipated their counters, citing subpoenas, certified lab reports, and third-party confirmations that left little room for doubt. Then, in the heart of the trial, Jordan brought in a forensic accountant. The man explained in plain language how funds were routed through shadow accounts, how transfers coincided with Savannah's sudden purchases, and how a seemingly independent investor was actually a front for Liam's debts. The evidence was not flashy. It was mundane and devastating. Numbers have a cruelty all their own. On cross-examination, Jordan did not shout, he asked. He asked about dates, times, signatures, and the precise wording of bank memos. Under his calm pressure, inconsistencies in Liam's testimony widened into chasms. Liam tried to reclaim dignity with anger, but every raised voice only highlighted the documents Jordan slid across the bench. Emails, drafts of prenuptial clauses, drafts Noah hadn't signed, but which bore traces of Savannah's influence. When Jordan pivoted to paternity, the courtroom leaned in. He laid out the DNA reports again, methodically, letting the lab tech explain matches and exclusions. Savannah's eyes flickered. She searched for a human face to plead to, found only glass and cameras. The youngest child's paternity remained unknown in the records, an ambiguity that Jordan used not to absolve, but to show pattern, manipulation, secrecy, transactional relationships disguised as family. By mid-afternoon, the gallery hummed with a new energy. This was no longer a private scandal. It was evidence unfolding like a novel, each chapter worse than the last for the defendants. Jordan's closing was clinical poetry, a reconstruction of choices, a tally of lies, and a plea for a ruling that matched the magnitude of the wrongdoing. When the judge adjourned for deliberation, Savannah slumped, the mask cracking just enough for the cameras to catch it. Liam sat motionless. Noah rose, a quiet man who'd learned how to wait. Outside the courthouse, whispers swelled. Would the judge deliver the final blow, or had Jordan only cleared the field for what came next? Savannah didn't remember leaving the courthouse. One moment she was sitting under fluorescent light. The next she was on the curb outside, rain starting to fall again, reporters shouting questions that blurred into white noise. Liam was gone. He'd slipped out a side exit the moment the recess was called. A camera flash caught her turning her face away, mascara running in streaks like melted armor. She walked until her feet ached, Dallas at dusk looked the same as always. Bright signs, clean windows. But she moved through it like a ghost of herself. Every shop window reflected a different version. Socialite, mother, liar, woman who traded love for comfort and lost both. Each reflection asked the same question without speaking. Now what? Up in his apartment, Noah watched the news coverage with the sound muted. Jordan's face appeared in clips, confident, precise. Grace's name trended beside a quote about methodical truth. Noah's own name appeared in headlines that called him the betrayed millionaire, a label that felt both distant and absurd. Caleb poured whiskey into 2 glasses. "You got everything you wanted," he said. "They're done." Noah didn't drink. He watched the rain on the glass and said, "She's not done. Not yet. There's always a second act before people accept ruin." He wasn't wrong. That night, Savannah called everyone she knew. Old contacts, her mother, even her father, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. Evelyn didn't answer. Richard did. His voice was rough from years of smoke and regret. "Savannah," he said, "you sound like your mother before the collapse." "I need help," she whispered. "They're destroying me." "Maybe," he said gently, "they're just showing people who you are." He hung up before she could reply. She sat on the floor, phone still in her hand, realizing that for the first time in her life, no one was waiting to rescue her. Liam came home close to midnight. He reeked of bourbon and panic. "They froze everything," he said. "Accounts, holdings, cars, everything's under review. The board's voting me out tomorrow." She stared at him. The man who had once seemed like freedom, he was shaking. "Noah did this," he muttered. He planned it down to the breath. She didn't deny it. For the first time, she saw the symmetry. The quiet man she'd abandoned at a hospital bed now controlling her world from afar. Her stomach turned. "Maybe we can talk to him." "Talk to him?" Liam laughed, bitter and frightened. "He doesn't want to talk. He wants us erased." Hours later, when Liam passed out on the couch, Savannah went to the balcony. Below, cameras waited like patient predators. She remembered her mother teaching her how to pose for them. Chin up, eyes soft, never let them see the cracks. But now the cracks were all she had. Across the city, Noah closed the file that had defined the last year of his life. His lawyer would call in the morning with the final ruling. The win was certain, yet he felt no triumph, only a hollow quiet. He looked at the torn family photo still pinned to his desk, 3 smiling children who had called him Dad. He whispered to no one, "They didn't ask for any of this." He picked up the phone and left a message for Jordan. "Once the judgment is done, transfer the child trust funds to their guardians. No one needs to know." Caleb watched him, confused. "You're still helping them? After everything?" Noah's voice was calm. "Revenge isn't the point. Balance is." Down in the rain, Savannah looked up toward the skyline, toward the office tower where Noah's light still glowed. She didn't know why she expected it, but she waited just for a second for the light to go out. It didn't. The courtroom was full before the doors opened. Reporters lined the walls, pens ready, cameras humming. The smell of damp coats and coffee hung in the air. Everyone wanted to see how far the story would fall. Savannah walked in first, dressed in a plain gray suit instead of designer silk, a deliberate attempt at humility. Liam followed, face pale, jaw tight. Noah entered last, calm as still water. He didn't look at them. The judge read through the decision without ceremony. Every sentence landed like a nail closing a box. Fraudulent misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, falsified declarations of paternity, willful defamation. The court awarded Noah sole rights to the partnership assets and damages covering reputational loss. The motion for alimony was denied. The paternity fraud triggered restitution claims that would take decades to pay, if they ever could. The final clause came quietly. All children herein, identified as not biological issue of the petitioner, shall have their guardianship reviewed by the state. A murmur ran through the gallery. Savannah pressed her hand to her mouth. Liam stared at the floor. Jordan folded the ruling, tucked it into his briefcase, and whispered, "It's done." Savannah rose, tried to speak, but the words scattered. "Noah, please." He didn't move toward her. His voice was low, steady. You left me in a hospital bed for a man who called me brother. You took what we built and turned it into a weapon. And now you stand in a room built on truth, asking for mercy. He paused. You didn't lose me, Savannah. You lost yourself. She reached out a hand as if touch could rewrite time. He stepped back, shaking his head, not in anger but finality. Guards guided her away when she began to cry. Liam followed, head down, a man suddenly aware that the game he thought he was playing had no restart. Outside, the storm that had threatened all morning finally broke. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes lit up the marble steps. Jordan and Grace kept moving, flanking Noah like quiet witnesses. Caleb waited near the curb with the car, rain dripping off his jacket. When Noah emerged, the sound of the rain covered everything else. A reporter's voice cut through. Mr. Wilder, do you feel vindicated? Noah stopped just long enough to answer. Vindication isn't a feeling. It's a consequence. Then he stepped into the rain. They drove in silence through the city, past billboards and glass towers. The courthouse lights receded behind them. At a red light, Noah rolled down the window, let the cold air hit his face. The rain smelled like metal and new beginnings. Caleb glanced over. What now? Noah watched the water run down the windshield, the city turning into streaks of color. Now, he said, I stop correcting other people's chaos and start building something honest. He didn't mean another company or deal. He meant himself. Behind them, Savannah stood under the courthouse awning, rain soaking her hair, cameras circling. She had no statement to give, no friends left to call, no plan to escape the picture she had painted. Noah looked up once more at the gray sky. The light changed. The car rolled forward into the brightness breaking through the clouds. The storm was ending.